What's up, everybody? It's Kami, and welcome to the Vento Aureo character tier list. In a couple hours, I'm getting a root canal, so I want to do this by tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. I'm recording this on Thursday. By tomorrow, like, my mouth should be fine. I'm recording this again, like, before the root canal, because I want to put up a video today. And I thought this would be kind of cool to do, because Vento Aureo is pretty much, like, done. Ish. It's in the last 6 episodes I think we have, counting tomorrow's episode, which is like episode 33 or whatever. So we have like 6 more episodes to go. It's gonna be done by like the end of summer. It's kind of crazy how it happened just so fast. You know, it started up in October and here we are already in June. Time flies, but I thought it would be cool to talk about all these Vento Aureo characters and kind of just give my thoughts on all of them, since we're pretty much done for the most part. And then if you're an anime only, I guess like the one thing you wouldn't know about as of now that would be on this list is Diavolo, really, because you haven't seen him yet. He's most likely going to show up in tomorrow's episode. I think the episode is titled like Diavolo or something like that. But I thought it would be cool to sit down and give my thoughts on all of the characters and kind of just, you know, show you guys what I think about certain characters, where I would rank them, where I would put them, and, you know, stuff like that, and talk about them and their stands. So this list is pretty okay. I guess right off the bat, and by the way, don't really take too much into account on like where I put them in terms of like, I don't know, order. So let's say I put fucking Giorno and Mista here in S tier, right? Just because I put Giorno over Mista doesn't mean I think that like this is pretty much just here, I guess, for where I would put them, but not so much order. Just like a generalization of where I think the character should be, and like, you know, what I like about the character or whatever. Where I think that character would go, you know, just for example. And of course, this is also my opinion, so don't take this as like the only thing. You know, of course, if you guys want to go ahead and make your own list and tweet it at me or whatever, something like that, then go ahead and, you know, do that. That's fine. Because again, this is just my list, this is my personal list. I feel like I gotta emphasize that this is just, you know, my opinion, because people always get all finicky over stuff like this. But you know, feel free to say whatever you want. You can call my opinion garbage. You can think that you have the way better opinion. That's fine. Just understand that this is opinionated. And I guess we'll start with some of the lower characters. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna put some of the weaker characters out of the people to show up just down here. So all these guys are here are kind of just like whatever. They're like the first few encounters that they have. In terms of like stand fights and stuff, they're not really too impressive, and they don't really do too much, aside from kind of just be there to introduce characters and, you know, do that beginning stand battle stuff where it's just like really basic and to the point. And people are probably going to be upset about this, but I'm also going to put Jotaro down here, mainly because Jotaro shows up for 2 seconds to say one thing to Koichi on the phone and be like, oh yeah, I killed that guy's dad. His dad is Dio. And, you know, Jotaro doesn't do anything. He's not really in the part. He's kind of just there for like 5 seconds, and then that's it. So he doesn't really do anything, so he doesn't contribute. So I think it's not a bad thing to put Jotaro down here, because he doesn't really do much. And I guess on that same vein, we'll put Coco Jumbo here. Well, Coco Jumbo we'll put actually up in C tier, because they do use Coco Jumbo for traveling. So shout out to the turtle for keeping them safe at times. But aside from that, the turtle itself doesn't really do much. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I guess we can also put Mr. Ugly Boy down here in D tier. I don't really like him too much. Notorious B.I.G. as a stand is like a cool idea, I think, but all he really does is just die, and then the stand fight happens on the plane. So I don't really care too much about him. It's just like, he's a whatever. Pulpo can also go down here in D tier. Mainly because he's just there for 2 seconds. Actually, no, I'll put him in C tier. Because Black Sabbath is a pretty cool stand. And for being like an early stand fight, and actually being the first stand fight, not counting Bucho Lottie, like the first stand fight against an enemy, since Bucho Lottie was an ally. Although it was an enemy at the time, but you guys get the point. Popo was like bad guy. So for being the first bad guy fight of the part, I think it's a really strong first fight against an antagonist. I think that Black Sabbath is a pretty cool stand. It introduces the arrow really early on. And you find out that that's how they were getting more people to get stands and be in the group. So it's kind of cool. Which is also, I guess, a parallel to exactly what they do in part 4 with Okuyasu's brother. I'm forgetting his name right now. With him having the arrow and kind of just like shooting people. Like when he shot Koichi in the neck. That was some great stuff. But it's cool that they have him there for that early bit. But aside from that, Popo doesn't really do much. And again, I know people are going to be upset because Popo is above Jotaro, but that's because he didn't do anything while Popo was like the first wall. Literally, because he's huge. Who else can we put in C tier that's pretty okay? People might be upset at this one. Squall and Tajano, I guess I'll put them in C tier. There's nothing wrong with the two. I'm just not particularly a huge fan of them, although the anime definitely does make them a lot cooler. And their stand combination I always thought was really cool between Clash and Talking Head. Like, I like their dynamic and the way that they fight as a duo, and they fight very well. I just don't really care too much for them, so to say. They're kind of just whatever, but I don't think they're bad characters by any means. Same with Formaggio. Formaggio's another like really basic early fight, but Little Feet is a pretty cool stand concept with shrinking people and stuff, which they do again in part 6 with Guess. And Guess's is a little cooler, but I also just think that Guess is a cooler character than Formaggio, and Guess actually shows up a couple times throughout, while Formaggio shows up and then dies. So there's not really much going on for him. But Little Feet is an okay stand. We'll put him in C tier. We could put Pericolo also in C tier, because Pericolo is kind of just old man taking care of Trish, who is part of the gang too, but he's not really doing much. He's just a normal old man, and then he dies. So that's kind of that. Who else can we put in C tier? Because now we're kind of getting towards territory where like the characters start to get really cool. I guess we'll also put Koichi in C tier, because Koichi's only really there for that beginning part with Giorno and, you know, introducing yourself to him. And I guess it's kind of cool and smart of Araki to introduce us to the next part with a familiar character. Kind of how he does with Jotaro in part 4. Although it does start off with Koichi, but Jotaro shows up like right away. And it's like, oh, hey, it's Jotaro. Everybody knows Jotaro. Everybody likes him. So it's cool that they did the same thing again here with part 5. Excuse me, with Koichi being there for the introduction. So we'll put Koichi in C tier. And again, the ordering on where I place them from left to right doesn't mean anything. I'm just using it as a generalization. But now we'll go into B tier. So B tier is characters that are like on the higher end, but not necessarily like favorite. They're just like better characters. We'll start off with Malone. So Malone is really weird. He's very strange. He does a lot of questionable things that we will not talk about, because we have talked about them before on stream and stuff like that, and in other videos. So I don't really want to go too into detail on, you know, the weirder stuff that he does. You guys know. If you know, you know. But he's a weirdo. But his stand is pretty interesting. And I like the way that he kind of just like acts when he's using it, because it's like, oh, I've got to make like perfection and stuff like this, and he's like typing away in his keyboard and giving the stand directions and commands and speaking to it and communicating with it. Like, I always thought that was a really cool aspect of it. So we'll put him in B tier. Next we'll put Illuso in B tier, because Man in the Mirror's fight itself is like really fun. I think the Man in the Mirror stand is a pretty cool concept. Kind of reminded me of Jay Giles' ability in part 3, where he had the hangman that was also off of reflections, but this was like on a whole new scale. So I always do like when Araki will take a concept or idea that he used before and kind of make like a revamp of it, or something that's like perhaps a stronger version of it, and he does something creative with a similar idea. I've always respected that he's able to pull that off, because I think that that's a really cool thing to do. So next we'll put up Pesci and his brother. I'm forgetting his name right now. People are going to hate me for that, but it happens. Sometimes you just forget, because there's so many damn characters in part 5. You just be forgetting stuff. But him and his brother, man, the Grateful Dead and then Beach Boy, like that train fight with Bruno and Mista is so cool, especially in the anime when you see Mista get shot a bunch of times in the head and he's like kind of just dying out on the floor. Like, it really shows the severity of the fight and how intense things really are as it's going on. Oh yeah, it was Prosciutto. There we go. So people are gonna be mad at me for forgetting Prosciutto's name for a little bit, but it'd be like that. So Pesci and Prosciutto. But like their fight is really intense. I really like how Pesci evolves in the later half of the fight after he sees Prosciutto like kind of sacrifice himself and do all this other stuff, just so that Pesci has a chance of getting to Trish, and you know, winning the fight. And that's like really cool to me. I don't know. I always like when characters are evolving mid-fight and they have like character development that makes them change drastically in such a short amount of time, to the point where like it doesn't feel like it's like out of place though, you know? Like he sees Prosciutto like doing all this risky shit and like risking himself just for the cause. And he takes that very seriously, and he kind of pops off for a second until Bruno literally just beats the shit out of him and zips him up, and he dies. But he tried. He tried really hard, and he definitely did improve in the fight. So I do like that about his character. Anybody else that I would put in B tier, because we're kind of getting... Actually, we'll put Trish in B tier. So there's nothing inherently wrong with Trish. She just doesn't do much aside from kind of be there. And then she gets Spice Girl, but... while she is on screen and stuff, and the few times that she does talk or interact with the characters, it's pretty cool. You get to see more of her in the later half. And by later half, I mean like the last act, because she's like directly involved with stuff going on when they get to the Coliseum. So like from tomorrow's episode onward, you get to see more of Trish doing stuff. So I'll put Trish here in B tier because, you know, she's just a whatever character. I don't really feel too strongly about her, but I also don't dislike her at all. So she's just here in this middle ground of characters that are like pretty cool, but I'm not like huge fans of. Now we're going into A tier. A tier is where I'm going to start putting in like characters that I really like. So we'll put Polnareff here in A tier, because Polnareff is just the GOAT. You guys know, like, I'm not going to sit here and explain how I feel about Polnareff. I've made like 4 or 5 videos talking about Polnareff on the channel. You guys can go look at all of those, and he's been talked about so much. But to sum things up, Polnareff is a character that went through a lot and survived a lot of stuff. He's really smart, and he's very useful when it comes to this last part. In this last part, I don't want to spoil it too hard, but the stuff that happens with Silver Chariot, man, like this next bit, I know some people dislike it and think it's really stupid and think it's bad, and they think it's where like part 5 falls off and they don't really like the ending. I like this bit. I think it's very cool. Some crazy stuff happens with Polnareff, and I really can't wait to see it animated. It's gonna be nuts. But we'll put Polnareff here. I don't know why I keep right clicking. I didn't mean to do that. Next, in B tier, or not B tier, in A tier, we'll put Naraku here. So Naraku is a character that I initially didn't really, not necessarily like or dislike, but he grew on me as time went by, and especially with the anime, I think his voice is really good. It's very fitting of his character. His fights have all been amazing, which Naraku gets a lot of fights in Vento Aureo, and I think he has the most kills out of the main group also, being like 5 people, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've like done all the counting on who's done the most out of the group. But Naraku, man, Naraku puts in a lot of work. Aerosmith is a very cool stand. I almost called it Little Bomber for a second because my brain immediately thought about Little Bomber because it's a funny localization name. But Aerosmith is a really cool stand. Although it's very simple and to the point. That's what I like about it. It's not really a complicated stand to understand. It's very easy to follow, you know. It's just doing simple stuff. It's this airplane that's got bombs, and it shoots you and you die. And it's got radar tracking and stuff like that. It's very straightforward, but it's strong, and it's a cool stand for his character, and I really do like it a lot. Next, we will put Bacio. He's another character that grew on me, especially with the anime, just like giving him that voice to his character, and seeing how he reacts around other situations and how he acted towards Giorno and stuff, and his bit of doubt, but always still trusting Bucho Lottie and stuff like that, and just going with the group. Even after like the whole stuff with Fugo happens, and Fugo like leaves and he calls everybody else an idiot and stuff like that, you know, Bacio never really doubted Bucho Lottie's intuition, and he went with it. And his death in the anime, it hit very hard for me, like way harder than I thought it would, because they made that whole scene like just really good. It was a very tragic scene, especially with Naraku's breakdown, which again, that also adds on to what I like about Naraku's characters. The anime definitely does make him better to me, because that breakdown scene, man, it does something to you. You know, it's really good. It has a lot of intensity to it. There's a very strong emotional tug on the whole situation. It's some crazy stuff. And so Bacio is just one of those characters that grew on me over time. I didn't care about him much at first when I read the manga for the very first time. So when he died, I was just like, oh, he's dead. But over time, it became a thing where I actually cared about Bacio, and his death was kind of just like, oh shit to me. Who else can we put in A tier? A tier is like really good. S tier is what I want to save for like the best of the best. Okay, so we'll put Doppio. I don't know if I want to put Doppio and Diavolo in the same tier, because they're the same person, but they're two different sides of the same person. Okay, so we'll put Doppio in A tier. So Doppio in the manga is crazy. He's freaky. He's weird. He's awesome. He's using King Crimson and stuff in his fight against Metallica, and that fight is really cool. But then you see him in the anime, and in the anime they do this really cool effect with his eyes when it's like twitching back and forth between him switching from Doppio's personality to Diavolo's personality. I really like the way that they show it visually. It's just very cool in terms of like the animation effects and like the impact frames on like his face morphing or his body just directly shifting and growing larger when he's choking out the fortune teller in the alleyway. Like, that stuff is so sick, and the way that they did Diavolo's backstory in the anime is really cool too. I loved it. It was really intense, and it had like that really dark and gritty and like serial killer-esque feel to it. You know, it felt like you were watching like a slasher film when you see Diavolo slowly devolve into what he is now. And when he starts killing everybody, he sets everything on fire. You know, it's very spooky and it's very intense. So Doppio gets an A tier. Next, we will put in... This is really hard. I gotta think for a second. Okay. We'll put in Chocolata and Seko in A tier. So Chocolata and Seko were characters that when I first read the manga, I was just like, whatever. Cool stand abilities, but I didn't care much about them, because when I read the part, and I've said this story a bunch of times, I'll say it again. I read the part like, what? It's 2019. I read that in 2015, so like 4 years ago. The scans were still really bad for part 5. We didn't have good scans. We didn't have high quality scans. We barely had colored scans that were like the best quality you could have gotten at the time, because they were still getting like better scans for it and translating it. So when I read the part, it was really hard to follow what was going on. Like the whole helicopter part was very weird to tell what was going on, because it was just like so bad in terms of the quality of the scans. So it made me not like these characters much, or not really care for them as much at first. But then the reread, it was like a whole different scenario. And then the anime just ramped it up. Like, these two are extremely weird and unsettling characters, but they're handled so well, and like they really go for making you feel uncomfortable when you're watching them interact with each other and like talk about each other and doing stuff with their stands. And like, they're both some top tier sickos, man, and extremely top tier sickos. I mean, like, they're so weird. They're very strange, but I love them both, and their stands are extremely strong. Like Green Day and Oasis, especially Oasis. I kind of underrated how powerful it was until watching it again in the anime and seeing his fight with Bucho Lottie. Like, Oasis really is a very broken stand ability, and Bucho Lottie got lucky with being a zombie and kind of just not having to feel the same amount of pain and stuff. He was like, oh wait, you know, like, my heart doesn't really work. I'm kind of just functioning anyways. So he was just like, whatever. I'm gonna just beat your ass and kill you. And that's kind of just how things went. But their fights are very fun. They're very fun. They're really cool, especially in the anime. They're very good. The 7-page Muda with the Ri is like super good, especially the Ri. It's awesome. And now we're gonna go into S tier. So I think, I mean, you guys can see like the last remaining characters here for S tier. I like all of these characters a lot, and I mean like a lot. And again, the order doesn't really matter, so I guess we'll just start talking about some of the characters now. So Risotto is the leader of La Squadra. which is his little group within Bacio. Risotto's a really cool leader, and he wants to get vengeance because Gelato and Sorbet got killed. They got chopped up by this dude over here, Mr. Chocolata, for trying to look into the boss. That was his way of giving everybody else the warning of, like, you know, don't try and look into my stuff. Like, don't try and figure that shit out. Don't fuck with me, essentially. And Nero goes through, like, a lot, man, because they're just trying to also stop the boss, but because Bucho Lottie's group has Trish, which is going to lead them to the boss, that he wants his group to go get Trish once they find out. And so it's a really weird scenario because La Squadra is not necessarily like a group of bad guys. Like, they're antagonists, but they're not necessarily like quote unquote villains. We're like, Diavolo is the real big villain. And then, like, La Squadra being, like, you know, Nero, Giaccio, Formaggio, Illuso, Malone, Prosciutto, Pesci. They're not really, like, bad guys, per se. They're just doing their job. And it makes me like all their characters a little bit more in that regard. Because they're different, you know? They're still trying to do the same thing as our main cast of characters, but they're a different group. And so they have slightly different ideas and ways of approaching things, but they ultimately have the same goal. And this puts Nero in a really tricky scenario when all of his friends die, and then the last thing he does is he bumps into the boss, but he can't be the boss when he's fighting Doppio. And he finally finds out that it's the boss, but it's too late because he's made it so far, but he's lost everything, and then he dies. So it's really tragic for his character. It's like, it's a big oof. And it makes me a little sad when I think about it. But his character's awesome. Metallica is a very cool stand. I love it so much. He's just manipulating iron and, you know, living things and just iron in general. And it's a very powerful stand that should not be taken lightly because it can easily kill a lot of different characters, which is why he was an assassin. And he can also blend in with the environment and stuff. Like, he's got camouflage. So he was a really good assassin. And he's very capable of handling a lot of different things. But he got, unfortunately, unlucky with Narancia and Bruno and everybody else also showing up on the scene, and then him getting shot with Aerosmith. It was just a ridiculous fight. The Metallica fight is one of my favorite fights, but Nero's a really cool character, so we put him up here. And we'll also put Giaccio up here because he's one of my personal favorite characters, and I really love the White Album fight. So Giaccio himself is this angry Italian guy, extremely angry Italian guy, and he fights against Giorno and Mista, and I think the Giorno and Mista fights are always really good because Giorno and Mista, just as a pairing, work really well together. Like, their character synergy is awesome. And the way that they bounce back is really well written. I do appreciate so much that Araki was able to get two of my favorite characters to interact so much and do so much stuff together. And I like it a lot. And so it makes this fight really cool when you see Giorno and Mista dealing with different aspects of Giaccio's White Album stand, which is this giant ice suit that he wears on his body that allows him to skate on water, freeze things like ridiculously fast, to like absurdly low temperatures to the point where like he can just freeze off your like body parts and stuff, and you would just die like very fast. Like any other normal person that has a bad day with they're not even like, if Giaccio was having a bad day and a normal person encountered him at the wrong moment and he were to pop off, like they would literally just freeze to death within seconds. So he has a very broken stand ability. His fight is very fun and very cool, and I overall just like him because I think that he's very cool and different. And that's what puts him up here, and no pun intended on the cool. Next we will put, okay, we have like what I think are the best characters in the part here. Now this top 5. Which I will actually, we'll make an SS tier, and then, I don't know, we'll make it black, and then add a row above. Oh wait, okay wait, I did it wrong. Okay, no, this is not supposed to be S tier, it's supposed to be S tier. Okay, this is SS tier. Oh, I am just like doing all the things wrong. Okay. Alright, I don't know why I made it black. We'll make it white so you can actually see it. Okay, so I have SS tier. Because, since we're going to do an SS tier, I will bump you two up here and also bump in Doppio. I'll put Doppio over here. But again, the order doesn't matter. Okay, so SS tier. I think these are the best of the best characters in the part. So Fugo. People are gonna think that I'm crazy for putting Fugo so high on the list. And then other people are gonna be like, yeah, because they know about Fugo. They read Purple Haze feedback, which I always tell people, go check out Purple Haze feedback if you want to see more on why people like him so much. But just within Vento Aureo, people seem to misunderstand Fugo a lot, and they think that he's a bad character because he left the group, or Araki's a lazy writer because he had to write out the character because he didn't want to include him, or he used the excuse of his stand is too strong and he could have just done this or done that, and blah, blah, blah. You got to understand, in Fugo's scenario, when Bucho Lottie announces his betrayal on the boss, right? Fugo mentions, I didn't pledge allegiance to you, Bucho Lottie, although I like you and everybody else. I pledged allegiance to the organization, which means that I'm not going to go against Diavolo, who is the boss. I'm not going against his orders. And he's like, it's not anything personal, but you guys are all stupid and you're going to get yourselves killed. Because he's just too dangerous to deal with. And Fugo was like, I'm not going to deal with this because, one, it's too dangerous. Two, it goes against what Fugo believes in terms of, his own respect for the boss and the organization, because again, he works for the organization. He's not loyal to Bucho Lottie. He's loyal to the organization, which people seem to forget for whatever reason. And Purple Haze is a ridiculously strong stand. Like, it's stupid how strong Purple Haze is, because it can't differentiate between friend or foe, and it's just got these capsules on its hands and stuff, and it basically just, one, it hits very hard. It has like really high destructive power. And two, these capsules release a flesh-eating virus. It's basically like a toxin that will essentially just rot your body into nothing within, I think, 7 seconds is like the longest it'll take if you've gotten like a good exposure to it. So like, he's ridiculously powerful. And by the way, his Man in the Mirror fight is like so cool. I love his beatdown on Luzo, especially in the anime. It's very cool and interesting. You get to see Giorno do some cool stuff with Gold Experience also. But people seem to misunderstand Fugo and think that he's like wrong or something, or he's like in the wrong for leaving the group behind. And like, you gotta understand that Fugo is most likely hurt too about the situation, because these are his boys after all. But he can't go against the boss. That's just how he feels about things. And so people always just, I don't know, people look at that the wrong way. I don't know how you look at that the wrong way and think that he's a bad character. But Fugo is great, so I put him within the top 5 characters of Vento Aureo. That's just how I feel about him. Next, we'll put in Diavolo. Diavolo is very sick. He's very twisted. He's the boss. He's at the top of everything. His design is pretty cool, I guess. I like the Diavolo Doppio split personality disorder thing going on, especially in the last part and the Coliseum. That's going to be really cool. And King Crimson is a ridiculously strong stand, along with him having the epitaph ability, making everything just like so much better. Although it's very draining on his stamina and stuff, and it makes it a little dangerous for him to try and fight a bunch of people all at once, which is why he avoided continuing to fight Bucho Lottie when everybody else kind of just ran inside, because he was like, it's dangerous, I gotta get out. But Diavolo is very strong. He's a very menacing and like threatening character to be around and see on screen and stuff. And the bit of on-screen time we have had with Diavolo being there when he's not Doppio has been like nuts, and I seriously can't wait until we get to see Diavolo, which we'll probably see next episode, or if not next episode, then the episode after that. So within the next 2 episodes, we'll be seeing Diavolo's face in the anime. Finally, it's gonna be crazy, man. But he's a very strong and menacing character, and I think that he's definitely one of the better villains in JoJo, and he's just very cool. And King Crimson is a very cool ability. And I know you might think it's kind of weird for me to have like such simple reasoning for putting him so high in comparison to like everybody else, but that's just how I feel. It's a very simple thing, I know. It's just straightforward and to the point, but he's just really cool and very strong. And he's one of my personal favorites. The next, we will put Bucho Lottie. So Bucho Lottie is essentially the other protagonist, and kind of really the main protagonist. But Giorno is the JoJo, so the Gio rather in this scenario. But Bucho Lottie is like a ridiculously good character, man. His character development from beginning to end is just great. His resolution in stopping the boss, like Bucho Lottie is genuinely a really good person at heart. You know, he wants to keep the streets clean from drugs and stuff. And like Polnareff points it out, he's like, oh, you know, like the irony, like all these guys are in a gang, but they're trying to stop like crime and bad activities, but they're in the gang, you know, to do so. Like there's an irony in that, but it's a beautiful thing. Sticky Fingers is a very cool stand. I love the whole concept behind it, just using like zippers and stuff for, you know, him undoing his own body into like parts with zippers, like on the train when he separated his heart and stuff and he had to put himself back together. And the prosciutto and pesci fight, or him turning his opponents, or rather not turning them into zippers, but putting zippers on them and disassembling their bodies and using it to escape, and like all the different uses for Sticky Fingers are really cool. And Bucho Lottie's character is just like, it's so enjoyable, man. It's hard to put into words how much I just like and appreciate Bucho Lottie as a whole. He's a very good character. He ties everybody in because everybody in the main group is familiar with Bucho Lottie, and since he is the leader of the group, you know, he has to carry that weight of being the leader, and just seeing him carry out his mission until the very last moment, excuse me, is just like a very cool thing to me. I really like it a lot, and I don't want to go too much into detail because the anime is getting to something very soon. It's going to be really cool with Bucho Lottie, but that's how I feel about him. Next, we'll put Giorno. Giorno is a character that grew on me a lot, like a lot. When I first read, the scans are bad again, and the translations are kind of iffy, so Giorno was a whatever character, but he quickly grew on me as time passed on and we got better translations, and then especially with the anime, it makes Giorno so cool. Because before, the popular thing used to be calling Part 5 bad and saying that Giorno was whack and like lame and stuff. And I love how it is just completely flipped on itself, that Giorno is like a super amazing character with really cool development. He has very creative uses of Gold Experience within fights. Gold Experience Requiem is going to be a really cool thing to see animated soon. I can't wait. It's going to be sick. It's going to look awesome. It's going to sound awesome. It's going to be animated really well. And again, people don't like that, but I think it's one of the cool things in Part 5 is that they took the concept of stands and evolved it to another level. And they kept it within Part 5, which makes it even more unique, you know. And you don't see too much of it also. So it's not something that gets oversaturated. It's unique to two characters, one of them being Giorno. And Giorno's just a really cool character, man. His fights are always so fun because the things that he does with Gold Experience, since it has the ability to give things life, like him using Gold Experience to turn the brick into a snake during the Man in the Mirror fight, so he could essentially give himself an anti-venom to not die from Purple Haze's bacteria, to him doing stuff during the Green Day fight, like when he turned the bullet back at the helicopter and it shot Chocolata through the face. Like, he does so much cool stuff with Gold Experience. It's really hard to not like Giorno as a main character, and just as a character in general, he's very fun. His voice actor is amazing, and you guys already know the Giorno like theme, the Vento Aureo theme that always plays whenever he does anything really cool. You guys have seen like all the memes and stuff. I'm like, oh, whenever a villain character thinks like, oh yeah, fine, I've beat you now, and then it starts playing the music and you start to hear the piano and the violins and stuff. It gets real intense. Giorno's really cool. My personal most favorite character of Vento Aureo is indeed Mista. So, Mista was an outcast. He kind of just was doing his own thing, living life and stuff, and then he got into a very, very, very tricky scenario in which he saw these guys attempting to do some very vile things to a woman, and he didn't like that. And so he went to go kick their asses, and then they tried to shoot him, and he somehow didn't get shot while he was beating up all these guys. He got extremely lucky. And so with him being extremely lucky in the scenario, he's like, oh shit. And he ends up shooting the guys and stuff, but he does get arrested, eventually gets pulled out, meets Bucho Lottie, figures out he has a stand and stuff, and you know, you guys know the rest from there. In terms of his backstory. But Sex Pistols is a very cool stand because it's very simple. You've got these talking little yellow people that just interact with each other in really goofy ways, and all they do is they deflect bullets. And since Mista is a marksman, he's able to, you know, shoot his bullets or whatever and have pistols bounce them back to hit people in vitals, or do stuff like in his first fight where he split the bullet in half and he shot Sal in his head. And stuff like that is just like, it's really cool. It's a super simple idea of the stand. But it's just so entertaining, and like he talks to Sex Pistols and like all of them being different numbers except for 4 because he has a paranoia against 4 because he thinks it's unlucky and stuff because like when he was a kid his neighbor got his eyes scratched out by like a cat or something, and like he had 4 kittens, so he's like, oh no, that's bad luck. It's something so stupid. But like that stupid little character quirk is something that just makes him very entertaining. And on top of just always being in like very rough scenarios in his fights where his enemies can just counter him shooting, and they make it harder for him to shoot them effectively with his bullets. And yet he still somehow finds a way to pull it off and still end up like doing something useful with Sex Pistols, whether he's the one that wins the fight himself or he has Giorno come in to help, like in the White Album fight, and Giorno does like the finishing blows. Mista shooting himself in that fight is what helped them reach that. And so like his character is just so cool, man. He's smart and he's always got the odds against him and he still prevails, and that's one of the things I like a lot about him. And again, his dynamic with Giorno is what also makes me really like him because they're both 2 very cool characters, and seeing them work together and how their stands work in tandem is always awesome. Even in stuff like the Green Day fight where Mista himself was kind of just put out of commission very early when he bumps into Chocolate. He gets very unlucky with Chocolate just damaging him very quickly, but he was still able to keep the one Sex Pistol with that one bullet with Giorno to help him out, and that's basically and essentially what allowed them to win. Because him shooting Chocolate in the head made a big difference in Giorno being able to get back onto the rooftop to not get overtaken by Chocolate's mold. And then, you know, Giorno goes from there and he has the 7-page Muda, and it's really cool. But Mista's character is just so awesome. So this is basically just my list. I think all these characters, for the most part, are like very enjoyable to an extent. They're very cool, and they all do really different things, and they all have really cool stand abilities. It's one of my favorite things about Part 5 is how diverse and like odd these stands are, and they're very different and really cool ways. Some of them are like basically older stands done again. In terms of like, excuse me, whew, I don't know why I'm so tired. But like some of them are reimaginings or like older concepts done in a different way, and I always thought that was really cool. So if you guys enjoyed hearing me talk about all these guys for almost 40 minutes, then go ahead and leave a like. You can follow me on Twitter to post your own tier list. I will leave the link for this in the description down below, so that you guys can go ahead and, you know, make your own tier list or whatever. Talk about however you feel about all these guys, because everybody's gonna have different opinions. Like some of you guys might like Squalo and Tajano, and you guys might put them at top of your tier list, and you might put them in SS tier list, or you might have them in the D tier, or you might have Part 5 Jotaro in D tier. I don't know what you guys might do. You know, everybody does a different thing. But that's the cool thing about talking about this in a quote-unquote tier list. I really just like the format of having all of these different like little categories, and just being able to give my thoughts on all the characters and list them off as I go, because I think that's just what makes it, it's really easy to follow, you know, my opinion on how I feel about them in terms of like a visual standpoint. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you stuck around, you know, go ahead and leave a like if you enjoy the video. Share it with people. Talk down below in the comments. I am interested in seeing your guys' opinions on which characters you may like or dislike the most. Because again, that's all really up to you guys. Everybody's going to feel differently about certain characters, and that's perfectly fine. Because that's just how it is. So thank you guys so much for sticking around. You can also join the Discord. The link is in the description down below if you want to talk to me there about your tier list, or wherever else you guys might want to share your list after you make it, or even just in the comments down below. You guys can, you know, make a list and we can talk about things. So thank you guys so much for watching. I've got to go get ready because I've got a root canal like 3 hours from when I'm 3 hours when I'm recording this. So that's gonna be fun. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.